Hi, my name is Sona, and you're listening to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. So here we are at the penultimate episode of season 16, and without me knowing, the title of this episode had changed since I first heard about it. Before, I thought the name was After the Ever After, but the new title is actually Learning to Fly, which now that I've seen the episode makes a lot of sense. And I was kind of surprised that seeing how that's actually something a lot of horse people use when they describe how riding is. I'm surprised it took them 16 seasons to name an episode after that. But anyways, I was surprised that I liked this episode. Not that I had like low expectations or I went in like fearing the worst, but I was kind of neutral. It was kind of a cheesy episode in some ways, and I've said this before, but I'm not really that cheesy person, so I was surprised that I actually didn't mind that in this episode. But I think some of it actually has to do with the way Alexandra Clark writes Heartland episodes. I think she's one of the few writers, dare I say, who remembers that these characters have a past. Like in this episode, we saw Lou talk about Marion and her relationship with her mother, which we rarely get to see. And I just thought that that was so nice. And it was really good in the moment when she's talking to Katie. And then, when Georgie comes back and she's kind of struggling with everything. And Jack steps in and reminds her that she and Phoenix used to be this fearless duo. And it kind of helps Georgie to remember that that was someone she used to be. So maybe she's able to tap into that kind of mentality again. And just those little things, I think they add to the story a lot and make the characters feel more real instead of just like having them stumble forward without really bringing forth things that could actually matter in the moment and make a lot of sense to talk about. So I did really like that. And before going into this episode, I was afraid, we saw that Georgie's appearance had changed a little bit. And to actually think back to when she first got to Heartland, she had the baggy jeans and the hoodie and the ponytail hairstyle. And then later on, Lou even tried to make her wear a dress, and she wasn't a fan of that. And now look at her, like, what a journey. But instead of doing things like they did with Amy in season 8, she had a different appearance as well. They didn't really mention that. It was just there. And it's actually kind of refreshing. Like, okay, it's very different and it doesn't feel Georgie like in the moment, but also, if that's something she wants to do or this is the way she wants to dress, it's actually kind of nice to see them not saying anything instead of like it was with Amy, like, oh, you're so snobby and you look so different. Like, what's up with that? And because it does feel like you're not allowed to change and grow. And maybe she doesn't end up liking this style after all, but it's just like if she felt good about wearing those clothes in that moment, then it's like, why not? I'm not gonna get too hung up on the details about Georgie's recovery. I mean, it's been like 2 months since her accident. Totally too fast to write, I would say. But I'm not a doctor, but it's just like assuming, because we know Heartland has never been realistic with those sort of things. So I'm just gonna ignore that so I'm able to enjoy the rest of the story and the episode. I did like that Georgie was kind of calm, but also you could tell that she had a lot of fear in her and this sort of darkness she didn't really know how to, handle. And I think Alicia did amazing job showing that. And moments that stood out to me were when she sees Lindy ride. At first when she's out in the ring with Amy and Lindy, and she's like, oh, she's so grown up and all. And then Lindy kind of slips, and then Georgie kind of freezes because she remembers her accident in that moment. So I think they did a nice job with that. And then later on, when she is done jumping with Shadow, and Lindy's like, when's my turn? And she kind of stands back and looks at her go. And she feels reminiscent about having that enthusiasm for writing. I think those were very subtle moments, but Alicia did great. And you were able to really read into the moment easily, even though it was very subtle. It just feels good to have Alicia back. I mean, she's so talented, in my opinion, and just that, role she has in the family as Georgie, and her bringing all this different energy from Florida is kind of interesting. And I'm just really excited to see more in the next episode. And I think in some ways I had kind of numbed myself to not think too much about her absence. But now that she's back, it's like, oh yeah, this is what it felt like. And I just really loved having that feeling back. Also, one more thing about Georgie's storyline. I think the pacing was pretty okay. I did enjoy seeing her go forward with her journey in this episode. Then when she comes back from riding with Amy and she gallops forward with Phoenix, and you can see the fence of the pen, and it's like, oh, is she gonna jump? Because it's like a callback to season 6 and those moments with Phoenix jumping over the fence. So I did really like that. I mean, it was cheesy, but it did make me a little bit emotional, not gonna lie. Just seeing that Georgie and Phoenix are still that great team together. And I don't know, I really like that. And when it comes to Georgie's scenes with Katie, I was really excited to see that because I think Bay is talented, Alicia is talented. So it's like, okay, I want to see how they act together as sisters because they've never actually shared scenes together. But we are to assume that they have a long history together. So I think they did a really good job with that. I think there was a little bit of tension. I think it was enough for us to, see that, but at the same time, it wasn't like too dramatic or like too explosive. It was just like this subtle, grudgy thing coming from Katie and Georgie kind of reading into it, but feeling kind of awkward, not really sure what was going on. And I did really enjoy see them in the attic room, talking about how they feel about things and then talking about Lou and how lucky they are to have Lou and then hugging and all that. So this is kind of like with Shane in the previous episode. It just really makes me want to see more. I also really like that even though there was that tension at the beginning of the episode, later on when they're at the arena and the whole all around Andy thing happens. Let's not get into that. And they're just like jamming along to the mega mix. It's just really cute to see that they've been able to overcome those feelings and are these sisters who enjoy having those moments together. Also, speaking of that event, if you've listened to the previous episodes, Jade is one of my favorite characters, and I've been missing her a lot these past few seasons. So I was really surprised to see she was featured in the episode. Bummed that it was just by a video, but I'll take it. I did get emotional about that too, because it's like with Georgie, like I try not to think about her being gone that much. But then when I saw her again, it was like, oh my gosh, like I miss her so much, and I just wish we would see more of her, and I wish she would come back and all. But even though the reasons outside the plot lines are probably like actor availability and, just not having really a story for her, it really made me realize that she's had such a big arc because here she is as this like Hudson celebrity, talking about her experience and how far she's been able to come. And so I was really glad to see her again, even if it was just for one scene and through the screen. Not too much to say about the rodeo school storyline. It was okay, it was just there. It wasn't like bad or anything. It's just the rodeo stuff isn't my favorite topic on the show, so it's just kind of there for me. But I did want to mention that seeing Carson eat ice cream from that Maggie's table, it made a lot of sense, living with Caleb. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I thought it was like spot on. But I did wanted to mention that I just loved Tim and Jessica in this episode. I mean, I know some people have problems with them, but I just love how they are good together. Like they're equal and they just know what's best for the other person. Like I was a little bit worried with Tim being pushy again, but I was really glad that Jessica was able to see that he just wants to support her. And in the end, Jessica was able to see that, her audience can be close by. She doesn't have to go far to show her work to be appreciated. So I really like that. And one moment that really stood out to me was when Jessica walks into the loft and she's like pissed off about the classy photos that were ruined, and she just falls onto the couch and she says something like, "Boots, please." And then Tim comes and takes off her boots. And it's just like, I would imagine that maybe that came out during the rehearsal of the scene. And I could just see Chris Potter maybe suggesting that because it's like so specific, if that makes sense. And he just has that mindset to make things a little bit more genuine and real in the moment. So I could see Chris Potter suggesting that. I don't have any proof to back that up, but it's one of those things that kind of made me go like, oh, I bet a lot of people can relate to this. I'm suspecting there's a little bit Chris Potter magic in that. I was also really interested to see how the whole Lou and Peter storyline would develop in this episode because we got that description about Peter just announcing that he's moving in. It kind of sounded a little weird and it kind of came up that way too. But it was an interesting storyline in the way that, this is something we've been wanting for a long time. So it's kind of like, okay, let's see this out. While it didn't really end up going anywhere, it just sort of felt like they just had to see it through to know that it wouldn't work or it just wasn't the right thing right now. So in some ways it felt a little pointless, but at the same time, I guess it's kind of like, well, at least they've now tried that and they can stop kind of speculating if that would be the right move or not. But I did think that Lou's hesitancy with Peter's idea of moving to Hudson made sense for her because this is like 15 years in the making. And it's like, okay, so now you're ready? Like, what, are you sure? Because not a lot of things have changed. Like, you haven't changed that much. Like, your values haven't changed that much. So are you really willing to give the ranching a chance? Like, why all of a sudden? Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But okay, like, if you are, like, I'm supportive of that, but like, really? And then having that kind of desk job that would probably make him bored in the end. I think those were valid reasons to suspect that this would work, but I was a little bit worried, like, okay, how is this going to go? Is this going to actually make everything backfire? And it kind of did for a while. But then even Peter was able to admit that, yeah, maybe he was trying to make some things happen that just don't naturally happen. But it was fun to see Peter trying his hand at helping with the cattle because he's so not about that lifestyle, even though, he can ride and all that. But just like, having that kind of cow sense and ability to adapt to that kind of situation. He doesn't have that, and it's like fine. But it was fun to see him actually try because he went out of his comfort zone and provided a few fun scenes. I think what I really appreciated in that little storyline was that they mentioned Mitch, and because he was one of those characters that I thought could have a lot of potential, and now that he's gone, it's like, well, another one bites the dust when it comes to one of my favorites. It was nice to hear them still remember who he was and, mention his name and kind of who he could have been in the family and kind of who made it more sense for Lou to have in some ways. So I really appreciated that little name drop from Tim, even though it probably pissed Peter off a lot. But he was lying, Peter's not Mitch, and Mitch made more sense when it comes to the Heartland beef business. Then on to your comments. Selden said, I feel like I should be able to say more about this episode. There were things that I liked, even loved, and still it kind of felt like just a filler episode. A few things though. I really loved Tim and Jessica together. Him helping her with her boots was both sweet and funny, and I love the level of support Tim gives to Jessica. I wonder if Tim was like that with Marion too when they were young, or if he was too young and arrogant for that. I didn't believe for a second that Peter would actually move back home to Heartland. I'm kind of glad it won't happen because I don't think it could work. They have tried that. Since I'm sure Lou and Peter will remarry or renew their vows, they better not divorce ever again. We have enough divorces and widows, widowers for one show. I like the scene between Katie and Georgie even though it was awkward at first. Fear and guilt can create such moments. Eventually, it was Georgie who helped Katie face Lou, and the scene between Katie and Lou was also beautiful. I love that Lindy was the reminder of joy for Georgie and how it was Lindy in the end of the episode who said, Look, Mummy, Georgie is flying. When Jade showed up to that screen, I might have teared up a little. I love her character so much. Oops, so much for just a filler episode and not much to say. Then H.L. Horses said, This was an okay episode. I did laugh more than usual though. I enjoyed seeing Georgie back no matter how differently she was dressed. Reminded me of season 8 Amy. She did seem to have more normal clothes for her character as time went on. Loved seeing her and Bay as it added some maturity to their relationship. Glad we saw them eventually bond, and I liked how Georgie talked up Lou to Katie. I'm also glad Lou finally brought up she was an outsider too in not liking the same things as the rest of the family, aka horses. I've been waiting for them to do that. Loved hearing about Marion too. Knew she would be traumatized by the accident, but I'm glad it was more nuanced and complicated than that. I'm also glad it wasn't resolved in one episode. Love a good Jack and Georgie scene, and we got one. I felt nostalgic when Jack brought up season 6 Georgie, and then the flashback at the end was really nice. I am mad there was no Jessica and Georgie scene, though. Jessica and Tim are super sweet as always. Tim is such a softie, and I love their relationship. Jessica saying, Boots please, was funny. The whole moving in thing with Peter was interesting. I knew he never was actually going to move in because of the logistic with Gabe, but I'm glad they eventually had a productive conversation about it. I still think he should get a job closer and live in Calgary or something though. The best part about that storyline was the hilarious scenes and lines. Peter saying he wants to join Heartland Beef and Jack's face was hilarious. And then Tim saying Peter is the new Mitch. I actually laughed out loud. That was so funny. One of the best lines of the season. And then Peter helping with the cattle was pretty funny too. Jack threw me off though by calling Peter a trooper because that was Mitch's nickname. I knew they were going to do the renew vows thing, but Lou acted all chill about it when that means they would be getting remarried, which in my opinion is a big step. I'm glad there was some sort of fallout from Jack's accident, even though it's not the fallout we wanted to see. Caleb getting a mascot and that whole bit was pretty funny. Tim's reaction during the showcase was hilarious. I was laughing and cringing at the same time when Caleb flew through the screen and started doing the whole mime thing with Lou. I was like, what the heck is happening? I did love seeing Jade and Tim's reaction was so sweet. It was super cute seeing Lindy barrel race. Lindy saying she didn't need Amy's help and then Edwin bonding with Amy and the look they shared at the end of the showcase was interesting. I hope Edwin is in the last episode because otherwise what was the purpose of his character? Like, yeah, he could just be Rebecca's dad. The fact that they had him in more scenes and he was involved with horses and he had a backstory with Olympics and we never found out the rest of the story made me think he had more of a purpose. If they don't, it would kind of feel like his story didn't really have an ending or a purpose because even the dad storyline didn't really seem to have a purpose or closure. Not sure if I'm explaining it right, but essentially, if the writer introduced all that just to not do anything with it, it feels kind of weird. Can't believe next week is the last week. Yeah, I was thinking they would do more with Edwin as well. Like, I maybe expected something like them announcing Rebecca to the arena and Georgie going like, huh, that last name sounds familiar. And then Amy going like, oh yeah, her dad is this Olympic rider or something like that to kind of start building some kind of bridge of possibly something happening with Georgie's storyline in the next episode. But we'll see. Then Sprague said, for me, the best part was seeing Jade. And S. Davidson said, absolutely love this episode. Georgie's back and loved Lindy and Amy's scenes. Then MC Loves Heartland said, I love the episode. It's probably one of my favorites of the season. I was definitely surprised when Georgie said that she quit, but I think it makes sense considering how serious her accident was. Her aversion to jumping was realistic. I also felt that her feeling of having to be perfect was done really well, especially since I'm sure that tons of elite athletes feel the same pressure. I did see her side to Amy and Lou pushing her to do something she didn't feel ready to or not comfortable with at that point. But I'm glad they did because it renewed her love for the sport and the confidence in herself. The tension between her and Katie was resolved quite quickly. For all that build-up, it might have been too quick. I did like how Georgie reassured Katie that Lou is doing the best she can and that they have a great mom. I was excited when Peter said he wanted to move to Heartland, but not sure what to think of him quitting his job. I was kind of confused when Lou wondered what that would do to them financially because she is the mayor and runs two businesses. I think they're good. Anyway, it was a bummer when Peter decided not to move back to Heartland at the end of the episode. It felt rushed. It seems like Lou and Peter still have some issues to work out. I'm so glad that they're renewing their vows and commitment to each other. The scene with Peter helping Jack with the cows was really funny, and them calling him the new Mitch. I loved how Lindy's storyline was woven into Georgie's and how it made her realize that she hasn't felt the joy of jumping in a long time. I liked how Jessica didn't want her photos to be photoshopped and airbrushed. I was skeptical at first when Tim put up that booth without her permission, but it turned out really great in the end. I love their relationship so much. I was so surprised when Jade's video came on. I wasn't expecting it at all. Although it would have been much more exciting if she was actually there, I loved her little cameo. Seeing Georgie's face during that got me wondering if they're still friends after these years. I really hope they are. Caleb being the rodeo school's mascot was the best. I too was wondering about how lightly Lou was taking the remarrying situation. Like, I'm not sure what that means exactly right now, but she's always had that dream about her perfect wedding, and I guess you could call this character growth, but I don't really know what to think about it before I see it because is it like official thing or is that just like them saying like I'm committed to you and having family there, so it's not like official on paper, or I don't know, it was kind of casual. I mean, it does make sense, but it's just, it was so casual. Then Dip said, wow, I feel foolish. Here I was hoping that Peter and Lou would build a little home near the Dude Ranch. I clearly do not understand Lou as well as I thought, since I did not expect her reaction. I did love how Lou jumped right out of bed, just like she did with Mitch when he suggested having children together. Nice touch. As to Katie's resentment of Georgie, the speedy resolution did not match up with the season-long build-up, but I really enjoyed the short scene we got. They had a lot of Georgie's storyline to cover and only so much Georgie's screen time. I'm not surprised that the Amy and Georgie plot received more attention as Amy is the main character. Unfortunately, that story was sweet but totally unsurprising. The theme I enjoyed most was the one about non-horse-centric people trying to fit in at Heartland. The holier-than-thou attitude many Heartland characters have towards anyone not country enough can be annoying. First, we have Jack and Tim's mock reaction to Peter's suggestion that he could be an asset to Heartland Beef. Good for Peter that he jumped right in and managed to get the job done. We also had another good heart-to-heart between Lou and Katie, this time about feeling like outsiders in their own family. I hope that they let their mother-daughter bond stay strong next season. Speaking of strong bonds, Tim and Jessica were there for each other all season and right now seem to have the strongest relationship on the show. I'm always happy when Caleb gets a chance to shine. Excuse my grammar, but he done good. The season is wrapping up, so there were lots of wins to go around. The fair was a win for Lou, Caleb, Tim, Jessica, and Lindy. Peter earned a compliment from Jack. Katie seems to be in a good place. Now we look forward to Lou and Peter's recommitment ceremony and some sort of outdoor nighttime horse show from Amy and Lindy. To which Sharon said, I expected that reaction from Lou, as Peter has never given any indication of compromising regarding his job. Pete, unlike a lot of people, works to live. To which Dip replied, in retrospect, I understand Lou's reluctance to Peter's suggestion. As you pointed out in your comment, Lou looks at the big picture. She tries to do not only what is best for everyone involved, but also what is best in the long run. And then Slisterbear's comment. There were many positives to this episode. I'm glad that Georgie returned early into it and what she is feeling after the accident seems plausible. I was afraid her issues were going to be magically fixed the first time she was in the arena with Amy, but I'm glad that didn't happen. I love seeing her and Katie together. Sometimes I forget they are sisters, so that was a well overdue moment. I'm also glad they addressed Peter moving back and that he decided not to. That wouldn't have gone well and would have rehashed old drama for no good reason. I'm glad Tim and Lou got to have their event. Caleb's wow factor definitely worked for me. Plus, it was so good to see Jade, even if only on video. I'm loving all the people returning this year. The writers are really giving the vibe that it will be Amy and the new stable hand together next season. I really hope not. We talk about how good it is for Lindy to have a friend. I think it would be good for Amy to have some too. There was a lot going on in this episode, and it was hard to drag it off, which was a good reminder not to think too hard and just sit back and enjoy the show. Can't wait for the finale. Then Alberta Train said, really happy that Georgie is back and finding her way back into the Heartland family. The ending with the flashback to the early seasons was great, and also, don't know if this was just coincidence, but it caught my eye. Georgie's clothing changed at the end, where she wore a sweater like she often did in the past. Somehow strange and also interesting to see Katie and Georgie together at that age. It's such a long time since we've seen them last, and Katie was played by another actor. I really hope that Katie soon, season 17, finds out who she really wants to be and who she is. She seems so lost and alone most of the times. Then Sharon said, I've heavily edited this review, so here it is. Tim without Jessica is still a jerk, especially toward Peter and Caleb. He didn't actually do anything to help his rodeo school. It was all Caleb and still couldn't give him any credit. Great seeing Jade and wearing color. All around Andy, hilarious. With Jessica, he's supporting and caring. She really makes a difference to him. Now he just needs to be a bit better when she's not around. Edwin, not sure about him and Amy, possibly. Lindy was so cute, barrel racing, and her smile brightens up any room. At the moment, the only connection they have is with their daughters. I don't see any connection between him and Amy. Guess Rebecca's mom was with Cass, as we won't see her either. Katie and Georgie talking helped Katie, plus seeing Georgie's scar made Katie understand why Lou was so concerned and attentive towards Georgie. Peter's still thinking about himself, whereas Lou thinks about the family, which she's done since coming back to Heartland. I would like to know more about Lou and Marion's relationship. I never thought Katie was like her Gigi Lindy. My first thought was that she was like Lou, on the outside of the family. Jack and Tim still treat her that way. In my opinion, Amy, Jack, and Tim, lack of a better word, are snobs towards no-horse people. Case in point, how they treat Peter, Lou, and Katie. Must be why Tim and Amy never speak or acknowledge Katie. I felt that Peter was condescending about Lou working. Is he expecting her to drop everything for him? Not the first time. A Rick in my life? Would love that. I did enjoy this episode, but thought it was disjointed at times. Whether that is due to editing or direction, I'm not sure. 2 more stories to finish up season 16, Jack and Al and Georgie. Hopefully Simon Dakin is correct about season 17. There's still more stories to explore. End of season 16 means end of Heart to Heartland podcast. No! I have enjoyed season 16 and hoping that season 17 has at least 15 episodes. So yeah, what Sharon is making a nod to is a previous crew member teased about Heartland possibly having season 17 because they're kind of looking around who could work for next season or something like that. So, maybe. And when it comes to this podcast, there are still some themed episodes that I want to put out eventually. So it's not going anytime soon. But thanks for that, Sharon. Then Stephanie said, I really enjoyed this episode. I've said this before, but I really liked Chris directing this episode. Especially the final scene of Georgie jumping in the ring. It was stunning to look at. Felt like a classic Heartland moment. Absolutely loved that the focus was mostly on the Fleming Morris family. Georgie and Katie. At first, when Katie was acting cold towards Georgie, I knew there was going to be some drama and some build-up resentment for her leaving and feeling like Georgie is the favorite. I'm so glad they had a talk and they were able to clear the air. That felt so real to me, as sister relationship can be complicated and if issues are not dealt with, can cause a rift between them. I hope now going forward we can see them become friends and see moments of them becoming close. As for the talk about Lou, I absolutely love that moment. I like that it helped Katie to see that she really is a lucky girl and has a great mom. And then, of course, the scene with Katie and Lou in the kitchen was a sweet moment as well. As for Peter and Lou, I'm glad they came to some sort of understanding. And I totally call that whole vow renewal thing. I loved him teasing her about it and saying how they're technically not married, so it can't really be a vow renewal. Also, the side comment about Rick always being around was hilarious. Tim and Jessica. I love how supportive Tim has been with Jessica when it comes to her career as a photographer. Looking forward to next week. I mean, I think it's safe to say that Rick is here for good when it comes to the Fleming Morris family. He's part of the family now, whether they like it or not. And then finally, no context, Heartland said. Not gonna lie, like the focus on the Fleming Morris family this episode. It's like it was made for me specifically. Got kind of emotional during the Georgie Katie talk about Lou and the scene with Katie and Lou talking about Marion. And then they added, I'm back because I need to add that I had really high expectations. Silly me. And I don't feel they were entirely met, but overall, I'm okay with the way things went for that plot line. But also, I must address other things. I liked Tim and Jessica over the episode, though I thought she would be more upset about him pushing. And Jade exists, which made me extra happy that she popped up since I so didn't expect it. So that was all the comments this week. Thank you for those again. Tomorrow we have the finale in our hands. So all I'm just going to say is good luck. And I hope that it's a good one because who knows if we'll get another season. And if we do, like how long the wait is going to be. And I want this finale to be something that we'll talk about for weeks to come, for months to come, for years to come even. Not putting that much pressure on it, right? Anyways, it'll air on February 5th. and it's called A Light in the Dark. Jack faces the truth about his rift with Al Cotter. Lou and Peter take the next step in their relationship. Georgie makes a decision about her future. Amy sees her own future in a new light. So usually I would be here to talk to you about the episode next Saturday, but unfortunately, or not so unfortunately for me, I have the next week off from my actual work. So I'm not going to be home when this episode airs and then the week after that. So you're going to have to wait for the next episode a little while longer. It'll also give us all a little time to digest whatever happens in the episode. And yeah. Thanks for joining me again. And until next time, keep your noses clean and your powder dry, as they say. Bye.